Welcome to Tarik Talk, a podcast exploring art, culture, and the stories that shape creative lives. I'm your host, Tarik Mendes, and each episode I sit down with artists and creative thinkers to talk about process, inspiration, and the moments that shape who we become. Thanks for being here. Let's get into today's episode. Welcome back to Tarik Talk. Walking into the Whitney Museum during the 2026 Biennial, you begin to feel how this exhibition reshapes the idea of painting itself. The Whitney, with its open architecture and connection to the city, becomes a space where materials, histories, and environments come into conversation. It's not just about looking at art, it's about experiencing how it exists in relation to the world around it. Curated by Marcela Guerrero and Drew Sawyer, this biennial focuses on atmosphere, on relationships, and on the systems that shape how we live. Artists here are not confined to traditional categories. Painting expands into installation, sculpture becomes environment, and materials carry meaning far beyond their surface. And Teresa Baker's work embodies that shift in a powerful, grounded way. At first glance, her work reads as abstraction, fields of color, texture, and form. But as you move closer, the materials begin to reveal themselves. Synthetic turf forms the base of her compositions, immediately evoking the idea of landscape. It looks like grass, like open land, but it's artificial, manufactured, controlled. That tension is central to her work. Baker is drawn to this in-between space, the space where natural and artificial meet. The turf becomes more than a surface. It becomes a concept. It asks you to question what you're looking at. Is this landscape real or constructed? Is it memory or simulation? Layered on top of this surface, she places materials like yarn, buckskin, and other textiles. These elements introduce a sense of touch, of tactility, of human presence. They feel intimate, almost handmade, in contrast to the industrial nature of the turf. There's a quiet dialogue happening between these materials, the synthetic and the organic, the industrial and the personal, the constructed and the intuitive, and that dialogue unfolds through abstraction. Baker doesn't impose rigid structures on her compositions. Instead, she works intuitively, allowing the materials to guide the process. Shapes emerge, textures shift, and the composition feels as though it's grown rather than been designed. You begin to sense references to landscape, not literal depictions, but impressions, horizons, pathways, open fields. The work holds the feeling of being in a place rather than showing you a specific location, and that feeling resonates deeply within the Whitney Biennial. This exhibition is concerned with how we relate to land, to environment, to systems that define space and belonging. Baker's work contributes to that conversation by grounding it in material. She doesn't need to represent landscape directly. She builds it through texture, through surface, through presence. There's also a sense of scale in her work. Standing in front of these large compositions, you feel enveloped by them. They're not just objects on a wall, they occupy space. They create an environment that you step into, even if only visually. And the Whitney's architecture amplifies this experience. Light moves across the surface of the turf, catching on the fibers, shifting throughout the day. The materials respond to the space, just as the space responds to them. It becomes a dynamic interaction between artwork and environment. What makes Baker's work especially compelling is its subtlety. It doesn't demand attention through spectacle. Instead, it invites you to slow down, to look closely, to notice how materials interact, how textures build, how meaning emerges over time. And in that slowing down, something shifts. You begin to think about the land, not as something distant, but as something constructed, altered, and experienced. You begin to question the boundaries between what is natural and what is made. Within the context of the Whitney Biennial 2026, Teresa Baker's work becomes a quiet but powerful meditation on place, on how we see it, on how we shape it, and on how, even in abstraction, we remain deeply connected to it. Thank you for spending this time with me on Tarik Talk. If this conversation resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe and share the episode. You can follow along on social media for behind-the-scenes moments, guest highlights, and what's coming next.